Hello, grade 8. Our biology lesson for this week is about reproduction. And specifically, throughout this lesson, we are going to see the human reproduction. Our lesson is divided into two parts. The first part is about puberty and production of gametes. But first, let me start with a general introduction. Sexual reproduction allows transmission of life in humans. Starting puberty, boys and girls become capable to reproduce. It means their reproductive organs can produce gametes. The fertilization of a male gamete and a female gamete leads to the formation of a fertilized egg, which is the origin of an embryo, which develops into a fetus in the uterus of the mother. So let me start with puberty and body transformations. Adolescence marks the gradual passage from childhood to adulthood. This period that begins at puberty around the age of 12 and is accompanied by a set of physical, physiological, and psychic transformations that take several years to be accomplished. So in the first document, we can see the progressive transformations of the body from childhood to adulthood. So we have a little girl, an adolescent, and an adult woman. And also we have a little boy, an adolescent, and an adult man. At birth and throughout childhood, a boy and a girl can be distinguished by their primary sexual characteristics, their reproductive organs, testicles and penis in a boy, ovaries, uterus, and vulva in a girl. So the primary sexual characteristic in man and woman is the reproductive system. Now, this document talks about the appearance of secondary sexual characteristics. At puberty, the body transformations occur progressively. The secondary characteristics appear, the girl acquires female characteristics, and the boy acquires male characteristics. The common secondary sexual characteristics of boys and girls are acne, which means a pimple that usually appears on the face, growth spurts, and appearance of pubic hair. The appearance of secondary sexual characteristics starts at the age of 10 years for girls and 11 and a half in boys. Also, the first menses appear at 11 years old in girls. Menses, or menstruation, is a woman's monthly bleeding that we often call period. The first ejaculations occur at 12 years old in boys. Ejaculation, it is semen emission, a whitish liquid by the tip of the penis. So puberty occurs earlier in girls than in boys. Now, let's see the functioning of the male reproductive system. And let us start by the organization of the male reproductive system. If we look at the first picture on the left, we can see a front view of the male reproductive system, and in the second picture on the right, we can see a profile view of the male reproductive organ. Now let's talk about the functions of different organs of the male reproductive system. Testicle, it's a gland that produces sperm cells. Prostate, it's a gland whose secretion activates sperm cells. Penis, it is the organ that allows mating, ejaculation, and elimination of urine. Epididymis, it's a duct through which sperm cells accumulate and become mobile. Vas deferens, it's a tube that conducts sperm cells from the epididymis to the urethra. And urethra, it's a duct that allows the passage of both urine and semen. So let's see what happens from the production of sperm cells to the ejaculation of semen. Starting from puberty, the testicles continuously produce sperm cells formed in the seminiferous tubules in testicles. The sperm cells produced by each testicle stay 20 days in the epididymis where they acquire their mobility. The epididymis contracts and expulses the sperm cells in the vas deferens where they mix with nutritive secretions produced by the seminal vesicles and prostate gland. The semen is expelled through the penis during ejaculation. So let's see the path of sperm cells from production till ejaculation. So from the seminiferous tubules to the epididymis, then to the vas deferens, and finally to the penis. In document A, we can see human sperm cells observed under the electron microscope. And in document B, we can see a schematic interpretation of a sperm cell. So a sperm cell has a membrane, a cytoplasm, a nucleus, and a flagellum. Now, let's move to the functioning of the female reproductive system, and let's start with the organization of the female reproductive system. In document A, we have a front view of the female reproductive system, and in document B, we have a profile view of the female reproductive system. Now, let's see some functions of different organs of the female reproductive system. The ovary is a gland that produces ova. The oviduct is the duct that ensures ovum transportation to the uterus. The uterus is a hollow organ whose inner part, called the endometrium or uterine lining, is at the origin of menses, and in case of fertilization, it can receive an embryo. The vagina is the site of sperm deposit, of menses flow, and the exit of the baby, and the vulva is the set of the external female genital organs. Now let's see the production of ova by the ovary. In the ovary, the ova are at different stages of maturation in the follicles. A follicle is a group of cells surrounding the ovum in the ovary. Out of 400,000 ova present at birth, only 400 to 450 become mature and are released outside the ovary. During ovulation, ovary expels a liquid containing many cells including the ovum. Ovulation is a cyclic phenomenon that does not last for a lifetime. It occurs at each menstrual cycle. If we look at the document, we can see the follicles. They are structures contained in ovary. The cyclic ovarian activity starts at puberty and ends at the age of 45 to 50 years. This is menopause. Menopause is the arrest of the ovaries' activities in women. On the 14th day of a 28-day cycle, a mature follicle expels an ovum into the oviduct. This is ovulation. The ovum is one of the largest cells of the human body. It is immobile and can live for 24 hours. Here we have a comparative table that compares the ovum to the sperm cell. We are comparing the size, the shape, motility, site of production, and the lifetime. The ovum is a big cell, but the sperm cell is a tiny cell. The ovum is spherical, but the sperm cell is elongated. The ovum is immobile, and the sperm cell is mobile. The ovum is produced by the ovary, and the sperm cell is produced by the testicle. The ovum can survive 1 day, and the sperm cell can survive 4 to 6 days. In women, the cyclic activity begins at puberty and stops at menopause around the age of 45 to 50 years. In each cycle, which lasts 28 days, an ovum is expelled. In men, sperm production is continuous from puberty until the end of their lives. Per each ejaculation, semen contains about 150 million sperm cells. Then, the cyclic ovarian activity is not the same as that of the testicles. Let's talk in details about the sexual cycles of a woman. The cyclic functioning of the uterus is manifested by a visible periodic event, the menses, and that of the ovary by ovulation that takes place 14 days before menses. Now let's see in details the cyclic activity of the ovary and the uterus. Document A shows the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle. A cycle begins on the first day menses and ends the day before the next menses. In women, menses or menstruations occur periodically every 28 days. Bleeding through the vulva, which lasts 3 to 5 days, corresponds to the elimination of the uterine lining. By the end of menses, the uterine lining is reconstituted and then thickens again. Blood vessels and glands develop. Menses are interrupted when the ovum is fertilized. Now, let's take a look again at this document and describe briefly the various events that occur during sexual cycle. The first day of menses or menstruation, bleeding occurs and lasts for 6 days. From day 7 to day 10, a follicle grows quickly in the ovary and the endometrium thickens. On the 14th day, ovulation occurs. The endometrium is thick and richly vascularized, ready to receive the embryo if the ovum is fertilized. The embryo implants in the endometrium and the menses are interrupted during the pregnancy. If the ovum is not fertilized, the cycle begins again. Now, we are going to talk about the ovarian hormones. A hormone, by definition, is a substance secreted by an endocrine gland, transported by blood, and acts on certain organs of the body. Now, this table shows the effects of estrogen and progesterone on the uterine lining. The estrogen helps in the thickening of the uterine lining, multiplication of the number of endometrial glands, and in the increase in the blood flow. The progesterone helps in the formation of the uterine lace, stimulation of the secretion of nutritive fluid by the endometrial glands, and in the increase in the body temperature. Now let's look together at this graph and interpret the variations in the concentrations of the two ovarian hormones during a sexual cycle. During the pre-ovulatory phase, the concentration of estrogen increases from 40 picograms per milliliter on the first day of the cycle to reach a peak of 250 picograms per milliliter on day 13 of the cycle. And then it begins to decrease. However, the progesterone concentration during this phase remains constant, nearly equal to 1 nanogram per milliliter. Following ovulation and during the post-ovulatory phase, another peak of estrogen reaches 200 picograms per milliliter on day 21 of the cycle. Then, this concentration decreases and becomes 40 picograms per milliliter at the end of the cycle. When the progesterone concentration increases and reaches a peak of 18 nanograms per milliliter from days 18 to 22 of the cycle, then decreases to 1 nanogram per milliliter at the end of the cycle. So, this means that estrogens are secreted during the two phases of the ovarian cycle, but progesterone is secreted only during the post-ovulatory phase. Now, let's move to the second part of our lesson, which talks about the changes from fertilization to birth. And let us start with fertilization. During sexual relation, sperm cells are released into the vagina of the woman. Now, let's see what happens during the meeting of the reproductive cells. Document A shows the path of the sperm cells in the genital tract of a woman. So, during ejaculation, after sexual relation or intercourse, few hundred million sperm cells are deposited in the vagina. The sperm cells travel in 1 hour a journey of about 20 centimeters through the uterus and into the oviduct. 1 million sperm cells pass through the mucus of the cervix and the other die. Finally, a few hundred reach the upper part of one of the oviducts near the ovary. The meeting of the sperm cell with the ovum does not happen necessarily on the day of the sexual relation. One must consider that the lifespan of the ovum is 1 day and that of the sperm cells is 4 to 6 days. Now, let's see the union of the reproductive cells. After the penetration of a single sperm cell into the ovum, the cell membrane of the ovum thickens and prevents the entry of any other sperm cell. The 3 steps of fertilization are the following. First step, we have the entry of the sperm cell into the ovum. Second step, the sperm cell nucleus approaching that of the ovum nucleus. Third step, we have the fusion of 2 nuclei to give a fertilized egg. The sperm cell releases its nucleus in the cytoplasm of the ovum. This nucleus swells and approaches that of the ovum. 20 hours after the penetration of the sperm cell, the content of the 2 nuclei is mixed the ovum becomes a fertilized egg. Now, we are going to talk about the implantation and embryo development. And embryo is the name given to the unborn baby during the first 2 months of pregnancy. The fertilized egg does not stay long in the oviduct. It moves to the cavity of the uterus with the help of the vibrating cilia in the oviduct. During its movement, the fertilized egg divides and becomes an embryo surrounded by a protective envelope. The embryo arrives in the uterine cavity 4 to 6 days after fertilization. It comes out of its envelope and attaches itself to the wall of the uterus on the 7th day. This is the implantation or nesting. On day 9, the embryo produces a chemical substance that blocks the degeneration of the upper layer of the uterus and causes the disappearance of menses. This is the first sign of pregnancy. The fertilized egg has reserves that supply the embryo with nutrients for a week. After that, nutrition will be provided by the placenta. During pregnancy, the embryo and the fetus, and fetus is the name given to the unborn baby from the 3rd month of pregnancy, develop inside a protective sac filled with amniotic fluid, the amnion. Now, we are going to talk about the nutritional exchange between the fetus and his mother. The embryo and the fetus need nutritive substances to grow until birth. These needs are provided by the mother through the placenta. The placenta has a large surface of exchange and contains many blood vessels. The blood vessels of the umbilical cord in the placenta branch allow close contact between fetal blood and maternal blood that can never mix with each other. And the umbilical cord is the organ that links the fetus to the mother's placenta. The maternal blood to be provided to the fetus is rich in nutrients and dissolved oxygen. A very thin wall separates the fetal circulation from the maternal, facilitating the placental exchange. The placenta is like a filter inserted between the fetal blood and the maternal blood. The unborn baby takes from the mother's blood the essential substances for its growth, such as nutrients and oxygen, and rejects wastes such as carbon dioxide. The placenta is a barrier that protects the fetus from microbes and toxic substances. However, viruses, certain drugs, and toxic substances such as alcohol, drugs, and caffeine can pass through the placenta to the fetal circulation. Finally, we are going to talk about childbirth. The delivery is the expulsion of the baby from the uterus through the genital tract of the mother after 9 months of pregnancy. This expulsion is usually due to contractions of the uterus that trigger the mechanism of birth. So if we look at the picture, document A shows that at the end of pregnancy, the fetus usually has his head down. Now, let's talk about the main stages of delivery. The first signs of delivery are the appearance of spontaneous and regular contractions of the muscles of the uterus. These contractions result in the dilation of the cervix. Dilation means increase in volume. Then, there's a rupture of the amniotic sac in which the fetus develops. Uterine contractions and maternal pushing promote the expulsion of the baby. The baby emits his first cries. It's a sign that his lungs are filled with air. The umbilical cord is cut a few centimeters from the baby's belly. The scar will form the navel. 15 to 20 minutes after birth, the uterine contractions separate placenta from uterine wall. This is the delivery of the placenta. So the 3 important stages of delivery are dilation of the cervix, the expulsion of the baby, and the delivery of placenta. That's it for today, grade 8. Thank you for watching.